Have you ever wondered why some women seem to go through relationships with men, even a lifetime, only to leave behind a trail of obsession, chaos, and heartbreak? It's never just about love, nor is it just about connection. There's something deeper, darker, and more importantly, something almost no one dares to say out loud. Because if it did, it would expose a cruel, hard-to-accept truth about women's sexual instincts. A truth that is not only hidden from men, but even women themselves sometimes don't realize. You might think it was all a game, that it was bad luck, that she's changed, that she's not who you thought she was. But if you look closely, the signs have been there all along, right in front of you. And when we look at this phenomenon through the lens of Carl Jungian psychology, when we explore the unconscious dynamics behind desire, attraction, and rejection, something terrifying becomes clear. It was never personal. It was never about you. It was a hunger, a psychological drive that worked in the background, craving attention, craving recognition, craving control. And when that wasn't enough, the instinct was to look for something new. The cruel thing is, this is not intentional behavior. It is instinctive. It is the shadow, the unconscious part of a woman's soul that no one wants to acknowledge. This is the reason why her body count, the number of sexual partners, never seems to stop. In this video, we'll unpack the unconscious mechanisms behind this repetitive behavior. How female desire, driven by instinct, by the shadow, and by unhealed psychological needs, creates a loop that no one dares to name. But if you've ever been in that situation, you've felt it. You've lived it. Are you ready? Because once you see this truth, you can never unsee it again. There is something that modern conversations about love often shy away from, not because it isn't real, but because it's too unpalatable, too inconvenient to talk about. It doesn't fit into fairy tales about love, romance, and gender equality. But Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, explored the darkest corners of the human psyche. He found that every individual lives with a shadow unconscious, a place where repressed desires, unhealed wounds, and instincts we don't want to admit we possess are stored. In the female psyche, one of the most misunderstood shadows is hunger, not physical hunger or simply sexual hunger, but a complex psychological hunger. It is the hunger to be noticed, to be desired, to be admired, to feed on the emotions of others. And when this hunger operates at the unconscious level, it becomes a machine that constantly consumes but is never filled. This is not because she is evil, nor is she deliberately manipulative. On the contrary, most of the time, she's not even conscious of it. That is why it is dangerous. It operates automatically. In Carl Jungian psychology, this is called the devouring goddess archetype, an image that runs through myth, folklore, and religious symbolism. The siren, the seducer, the dangerous lover, the dark mother, figures who attract, possess, and then leave. Not because they are villains, but because that archetype exists in the female psyche as a response to inner emptiness, unresolved wounds, and an unconscious desire to be filled. But here's the cruel paradox. Attention, validation, affection from others are never enough. Nothing on the outside can truly fill the void inside. And so the cycle repeats. It was never about you. You're not the end. What she craves is an escape from the emptiness inside, a distraction from the parts of herself she can't reach. She was not enough. And there was always a voice inside that whispered, "You are not enough. You will never be enough. Find more. Get more. Eat more." But like drinking seawater to quench thirst, the more she drank, the more thirsty she became. That is why so many men are left in confusion. They do not understand what has just happened. They wonder why everything has changed so quickly, why the warmth of the past has suddenly turned into indifference, why the words of love are now only silence. It's not a coincidence. It's not a mistake. It's an unconscious mental program running according to a script. The saddest thing is that many women themselves are unaware that they are being controlled by this cycle. It operates below the conscious level, a play of shadows. Carl Jung once said that the only way to escape the control of the shadow is to bring it into the light, look it straight in the eye, name it, and integrate it into yourself. But how many people dare to look in the mirror, to face the scarred part of their soul? Often, very rarely. Instead of self-reflection, people choose to blame. He's too boring. He's not interesting anymore. Or on the man's side, I'm not good enough. I should have tried harder. But all of these are lies that are unconsciously made up to avoid the larger truth, that hunger was never about you. It existed before you came, and it will continue to exist after you leave. This is the psychological mechanism behind the popular saying, her number of sexual partners never stops. Not because she is promiscuous, but because the hunger in her unconscious has never been cured. Men change, names change, faces change, but the pattern remains the same until the woman truly confronts her own shadow. And here's what almost no one dares to say. If she doesn't embark on a healing journey, if she doesn't come to terms with that neglected part of her soul, the hunger will last forever. Because attention is just food, but never satiety. At first, it seems so simple. She seeks attention, you give it. She needs recognition, and you give compliments. She wants to feel special, and you try to make it happen every day. And for a while, everything seems fine. You think you've found the key. You believe this is what keeps the relationship strong. But then that warmth begins to fade. Things that used to make her smile no longer get a response. Your efforts seem invisible. You start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't all that effort enough? Why did things change so fast? The answer is, you did nothing wrong. The problem isn't you. The problem is that you're trying to fill a void that no one else but her can fill. From the perspective of Carl Jungian psychology, this is called the pursuit of external fulfillment. When a person is carrying unhealed wounds, especially when they are not conscious of it, the mind will unconsciously seek something external to temporarily relieve the emptiness inside. For the female soul stuck in this cycle, attention from others is like oxygen, helping her breathe, but only for a short time, because the feeling of suffocation always comes back. Attention isn't what she needs. It's not the compliments, the sweet texts, the gifts, the attention. What attention represents, at a deep psychological level, is a whisper to the subconscious. I exist. I am valuable. I am wanted. I am enough. At least in that moment. But here's the most dangerous flaw in that cycle. External validation has an expiration date. The human mind adapts. What once excited you becomes familiar. What once fascinated you becomes boring. The sweet feeling of dopamine wears off, and the novelty dies. And then the source of pleasure becomes the thing that makes her uncomfortable. This is when many men start saying, she has changed. But the truth is, she hasn't changed. It is just that the unconscious chemical medicine has worn off. The illusion has collapsed. The temporary distraction from the inner void has ended. And the voice came back. Find more. Get more. It's not enough. That moment is when the distance begins. From warmth to indifference. From intimacy to strangeness. From having each other to disappearing. The sad thing is that she often can't explain why. In her conscious mind, she just feels something has changed. Maybe she believes you've changed. Maybe she convinces herself that love has lost its original magic. But really, it's just the old hunger coming back. Just as raw, just as hungry, just as empty as ever. Carl Jung understood this mechanism very well. He pointed out that the unconscious mind always tries to avoid facing its inner wounds, and one of the most common ways is to seek external stimulation to fill that void. But the problem is, the mind doesn't work that way. Darkness can be temporarily distracted, but it can never be healed if you keep running away. No man can outrun an unhealthy relationship between a woman and her emptiness. No amount of proof, pampering, gifts, love, sacrifice is enough for someone who has never faced the dark side of their soul. And here is the cruelest truth, the one that almost no one dares to say. That hunger was never really directed at the man standing in front of her. Not at you, not at the one before, and not at the one who will come after. Those were just objects chosen unconsciously, as a temporary remedy, to escape the inner void. And when that drug starts to wear off, the unconscious starts scanning, looking for a new source, a new person, a new look, a text message that sends dopamine soaring again. A new psychological meal. Not because she was evil, not because she meant to hurt anyone, but because the shadow always operates like that, until it is seen and healed. Men left behind in this cycle often feel as though they are being invisibly judged. They don't understand what rule was broken. They don't see the obvious mistake. But the truth is that it was never about them. You were never the problem. Because the problem was never you. This is the psychology behind the saying, her body count never ends. It's not just about the number of sexual partners. It's about the hunger that never gets satisfied. When attention only feeds but never satisfies, the cycle never stops. There is a pattern ingrained in the female psyche that almost no one wants to name, but it is everywhere. Relationships begin with infatuation, passion, and admiration, and end in confusion, indifference, and abandonment. The first stage is the seduction phase. Feminine energy is magnetic, attractive, alluring, and captivating. Every look, word, and gesture seems to send you the message. You are special. You are unique. And this is when many men fall in love. Dangerously. They think they've found their destiny. But what's behind the seduction? It's an unconscious psychological transaction. You're being consumed. Your attention, your energy, your presence, compliments, affection, emotions. All of it becomes fuel for that psychological machine. She doesn't mean to hurt you, but hunger demands to be fed. And then, like any addiction, the dopamine begins to wear off. The new becomes old. The unfamiliar becomes familiar. And then the old excitement begins to feel suffocating. What once fascinated her becomes a burden. At that point, the shedding phase begins. The warmth disappears. The conversations thin out. The smiles fade. The intimacy recedes. And in its place comes distance, criticism, and avoidance. The person who once saw you as the universe now sees you as a nuisance, or worse, invisible. Men in this stage are often shocked. They try to analyze everything. What did I say wrong? Was I there at the wrong time? Should I have been more patient, more interesting? But none of those questions have answers. Because you're asking the wrong question. You did nothing wrong. Because that paradigm was never about you. Carl Jung once said, "What is not yet conscious will control your life, and you will call it destiny." This is exactly what happens. If a woman does not face the void within herself, if she does not dare to look into the mirror of her shadow, this cycle will never end. Many men think that if they try harder, love more, and are more patient, they can save the relationship. But the cruel truth is, you cannot be the cure for a pain that was never yours. And here's the heartbreaking thing that few people are prepared for. You can be the best man she's ever met, and still not be enough for a woman who has never felt enough of herself. You can't love her enough if she never learns to love herself. You can't fill a hole you didn't create. You cannot save someone who is determined to avoid their internal battle. And the worst part, she might never realize it. She will leave, find someone else, and repeat the cycle. The next person will just be another dose, another anesthesia, another person lost in the loop just like you were. Because until she stops, really stops, to face herself, that hunger still exists, that darkness still whispers, that desire still disguises itself as love. And you, the one who believed that this time will be different, are just one person in a long line of people who have walked out of her life. Accepting this truth is the bitterest pill you will ever have to swallow, but it is also the beginning of freedom. When you stop blaming yourself, when you stop chasing a shadow, when you stop trying to heal wounds that don't belong to you, you begin to realize you were never the one with the problem. You are just a mirror. And the truth is always scary when you have to face yourself. And remember, awareness is the first step. But if you don't begin the journey of facing your darkness, you will continue to attract the same type of hurt, just in a different form, not by trying to fix them, but by choosing yourself. Because you cannot be someone's savior when they do not want to be saved.